Magandang umaga, Pilipinas! Welcome to Eagle News Mornings from Canada. I'm Archie Rose Natividad Yi, reporting from Vancouver in the province of British Columbia, Canada, bringing you news and commentary from across the country. Here are some of the stories we'll cover today. Federal government gives $2 billion to schools for safe reopening. Ministry of Education releases plans for safe return to schools in British Columbia. Temporary mask bylaw in Ottawa is extended to October 31st. NBA resumes after players boycott. We start another week. Good Monday morning. As you are grabbing a fresh cup of coffee, here is what the weather looks like in Manila. AccuWeather is forecasting a high of 27 degrees Celsius with partly cloudy skies. Now let's check out the weather across Canada. Our weather street scene comes from Cypress Mountain in British Columbia. Thanks to Jen De Leon for this video. Let's go across the country, starting from the West Coast. Vancouver, Canada, mostly sunny at 17 degrees. Edmonton, sunny at 13 degrees. Calgary, partly sunny at 14 degrees. Winnipeg, thunderstorms at 16 degrees. Montreal, partly sunny at 19 degrees. Ottawa, mostly cloudy at 20 degrees. Toronto, mostly cloudy at 20 degrees. And Halifax, mostly sunny at 22 degrees. Now over to our top stories. Schools across Canada are slated to open next week, and Canada's Public Health Officer, Dr. Theresa Tam, forewarns that families should expect to see cases of COVID-19 in schools as children return to class.
Right now in Canada, in the vast majority of in Canada, the numbers and the rate of infection is actually very low. So that is a really key factor. And we will, and I would say that it is expected that we will get some cases in schools because the chances of having a case will be reflective of what's going on in your community. And so people need to be prepared with local public health on exactly what to do when you have a case. So having a plan is the most important thing, so everybody knows what would happen if you did get a case, and that people won't be surprised and that they would feel reassured in terms of what will happen. So I don't know what that specific circumstances is.
Dr. Theresa Tam also addressed the importance of collecting data in regards to schools that were affected by a COVID-19 outbreak and schools that were successful in reopening without any cases.
And one other thing that I think is really important is to systematically collect some information about schools, cases in schools, whether they're acquired in school or outside of school. Right now, the data suggests that schools are not a major driver for, transmission in the community, but we have to actually get that data and see in the Canadian context. We also have to collect data on schools that successfully opened, not just report on the ones that have had an outbreak, because you want to learn, well, what made that setting successful in terms of, maybe out of 2,000 schools, you hear of 2 outbreaks. And that isn't necessarily a cause to blanket approach to everything. And we will learn a lot. And I think people, I would like to be able to get some of that information in a systematic way to inform policies.
Over in the province of Quebec, where schools opened last week, just over 20 teachers at Le Montaigne High School are in quarantine after 2 cases of COVID tested positive from among the staff. According to Melanie Poirier from CSSMI, the service center that had facilitated the school, the results came in after teachers had visited the school prior in preparation for the school's opening. This comes after major concern from parents on the government restarting the school system too early. Premier François Legault addressed the school opening measures.
what we want to do and what we agreed on with the public health department is to keep children, at least for the first few weeks, within the same classroom. We call it a bubble. And even for sports, they can have sports or arts right now, but only for the ones in the same classroom. But what we said in the last few days is that in the next few weeks, if things are going well, we'll restart sport-études and art study like it was before.
The Premier also shared the struggle of the lack of supply of teachers in the Quebec school system and how the COVID-19 cases in Deux-Montagnes High School impacts the students.
But as you know, we're very tight with the number of teachers. We had 250 teachers missing last week. It was the same thing last year. Of course, it takes 4 years to train a new teacher in our university. So we cannot change that overnight. So yes, Quebec is tight with teachers, and unfortunately, when we see a case like in Deux-Montagnes, where we have 20 teachers that are in quarantine, of course it has impact on our children. But of course, it's a very small number comparing to all the million children going back to school. So I hope it continues to be very limited.
The Quebec provincial government also announced that students will be allowed to participate in sports and arts activities in between groups starting on September 14. The first measure is to monitor cases within one class, and if results improve in the next couple weeks, sports and arts will restart as stated by the Premier.
We have a major challenge facing us in the next few days. We have close to 1 million kids going back to school. So we have to be careful. Some parents are scared about this situation. So what we decided for a first step is to keep the children in schools within one classroom, including for sports and arts.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced that the Canadian government will be giving $2 billion in funding to help schools open safely across the country. Eagle News correspondent Riza Mangilit reports.
The federal government has stepped in to help school boards across the country, giving $2 billion worth of funding to help schools safely reopen this September. As announced by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Ontario will receive $762 million of that funding. Premier Ford further explains where the extra funding will be used. Take a look.
We will target that funding where the extra supports will be most effective. For ventilation, shoring up PPE supplies, additional remote learning supports, enhancing safety measures on school buses, and hiring more teachers and hiring 125 more public health nurses for a total of 625 public health nurses in our schools.
The funding comes amidst the criticism the Ontario government is facing for not planning the safe reopening of schools earlier to create a more efficient plan. Many school boards have been left scrambling to safely accommodate students and staff with very little resources. Many parents and teachers are questioning just how safe it will be for children to return to schools this September. NDP leader Andrea Horvath weighed in on Twitter.
It's clear from how he intends to spend the federal funds that Ford is digging in his heels. He won't use the federal money to shrink class sizes for everyone, and he won't chip in the funding needed to cap class sizes for everyone. Ford should have funded smaller, safer classes months ago and gotten to work on making it happen in time for September.
Horvath also states that this is proof that the education situation is so dire in the province that the federal government had to step in. Whatever the stance, it is clear that any extra funding is welcome to help keep students and teachers safe, giving parents the peace of mind they need. In Toronto, Raisa Mangilit, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Thanks, Riza. British Columbia details plans for a safe return to schools. Joining us live is Eagle News correspondent Kathleen Cruz with more details. Good morning, Kathleen.
Good morning, Archie Rose. BC Ministry of Education has announced that BC schools will open for in-class learning in September, despite the concerns of parents to send their children to school in these times of pandemic. As BC takes forward to support safe return to classroom, the Ministry of Education has developed detailed plans to make sure schools are safe for students and staff. Here is Rob Fleming, Ministry of Education has to say.
For Disease Control and the Ministry of Education surveyed 26,000 parents and caregivers by July. The majority told us that they felt a lot of stress trying to support their children with at-home remote learning while holding down their jobs and trying to adapt to the changes in the school system and the world around them. Today, all 60 public school districts have posted their detailed restart plans online, so parents and families can continue to prepare and support their children for a safe return to the classroom. We've had a chance to review each of these plans, and I'm impressed by the thoughtful, considerate, and innovative local solutions that we see within those plans. There's no question, as we all know, that schools are going to look very different than they did before the pandemic began, or even in June. Much like vital services and businesses that reopened are very different than they were before the pandemic. And education is one of those vital services in our province. It is a must for all children, and it must be delivered in the best and safest way possible. The plans approved and published today confirm that all elementary and middle schools will have access to full-time in-class instruction within the safety measures developed by the Provincial Health Office and the BC Centre for Disease Control. While many secondary schools will be able to support secondary students to return to the classroom full-time,
Fleming has directed school districts to contact all families regarding their safety plans and confirm if they plan to send their children or child to school or if alternative options are needed. The plans include safety measures such as wearing masks, daily schedules for classes and lunches, daily health assessment requirements, staggered pickups and drop-off times, increased cleaning protocols, and hand-washing directions. According to Fleming, he knows that some families will continue to have medical concerns, and he expects that school districts will be flexible to provide remote options to students and provide the tools they need to support the learning of students. To ensure the health and safety of students and staff, BC has allotted funding to purchase 1.5 million masks, enough for every public school staff member and students, including face shields for K-12 schools as an added PPE. In Vancouver, Kathleen Cruz, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thanks, Kathleen, for your report. Still to come, temporary mask bylaw in Ottawa extended to October 31st. And NBA resumes after players boycott. You are watching Eagle News Mornings from Canada.
Basta't nandyan ka, may pag-asa, dahan-dahan sa...
Kailangan nating talunin tong pandemic na to.
Kailangan lumaban na kailangan may gawin.
I'm not going to be part of that 40% that will not survive, and that's it.
Muling susulong, pwede pang mangarap.
There's still a drop of life, then I'm gonna hold on to that and I'm gonna keep it alive.
Even just buying one mask na 35 pesos, it's like we dance for joy.
Nag-umpisa ka na, sana may bumili ng tinda ko, parang back to basic ako.
Doon mo ma-feel na, okay, may pag-asa pala.
For the sake of the Filipinos, we just have to give it a fight, di ba?
Pwede pang para.
Welcome back. You are watching Eagle News Mornings from Canada. I'm Archie Rose, Natividad Yi. Ottawa has extended their temporary mask bylaw to October 31st. Here with more is Eagle News correspondent Sabir Mufti. Good morning, Sabir.
Good morning, Archie Rose. Since the implementation of the temporary mandatory mask bylaw, residents in Ottawa have embraced the wearing of masks when in public spaces and even at work, especially those in customer service. According to Ottawa Public Health, the Ottawa City Council voted that the temporary mask bylaw be extended until October 31st. Now, this is including mandatory masks in additional enclosed spaces, for example, taxis and ride shares, as well as common areas and shared services of condos, multi-residential buildings, apartments, and the option of establishing mandatory mask zones in crowded outdoor areas and spaces where physical distancing is difficult. With the school reopening for 2020 moved from September 3 to between September 8 and September 18, government officials are doing everything they can to get the schools ready. The Ottawa Public Health recommends that younger students from kindergarten to grade 3 should not be discouraged from wearing a mask if they can tolerate it and if they are able to wear them properly. A new screening tool is released by the Ottawa Public Health for students. The screening tool will help parents and guardians to decide whether or not their child should attend school. Right now, there are 20 reported cases of COVID-19 in Ottawa, currently 11 people in hospital, and 2 are in intensive care. According to Ottawa Public Health, they are seeing COVID-19 transmissions from close contacts, which includes family members and loved ones visiting their families. From Ottawa, Canada, this is Sabir Mufti. We live in interesting times.
Thanks, Sabir. The Iglesia ni Cristo in Winnipeg gives relief care packages to the local seniors through their Aid to Humanity outreach event. Eagle News correspondent Kathleen May Pangan reports.
The members of the Iglesia ni Cristo, or Church of Christ, are delighted in celebrating their 106th anniversary today, July 27, 2020, by giving care packages to those who are in need here in Willow Center, number 61 Tyndall Avenue, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
The Iglesia ni Cristo, or Church of Christ, through the leadership of their Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, through the Felix Y. Manalo Foundation, continues to show their love and care for the people who are affected because of the COVID-19 virus.
And we're very happy that you chose to come here and help our seniors. And we appreciate everything that you're doing for the seniors in our community. And we'd like to thank the Church of Christ.
Today is one of very many Aid for Humanity events that the Church of Christ and Brother Eduardo put on throughout the year, many times throughout the year. And it's just an opportunity to give back to the community.
Despite the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the members are extremely inspired and motivated by their Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, to help and show their love and care to their fellow men through the Aid to Humanity outreach program.
We are so thankful that we are able to reach out to the community and show how much the Church of Christ truly loves our fellow men.
The Iglesia ni Cristo indeed is a positive force in society to members and non-members alike. Reporting for Eagle News from Manitoba, Canada, I am Kathleen May Pangan. We live in interesting times.
Thanks, Kathleen. Now in sports, the NBA resumes after the players' boycott. Here is EBC sports reporter Zurita Sese.
With the NBA playoffs well under its way, we're starting to see teams move on to the second round. One team that was still fighting for their second round spot was the Milwaukee Bucks, who is scheduled to play the Orlando Magic on Wednesday for Game 5. But when the horn sounded, signifying that it was time for tip-off, the Bucks remained in their locker rooms while the Magic waited. We now know that Milwaukee decided to boycott Game 5 against the Magic as their response to the shooting of 29-year-old African-American man Jacob Blake, who was shot by police. Other teams who were scheduled to play that night also followed suit, which then led to a 72-hour boycott where players demanded tangible actions from their organizations and the NBA as a whole before resuming play. In just 3 days, and after numerous meetings between players, teams, organizations, and the Board of Governors, the NBA and its Players Association agreed to resume play, but with the following terms in place. First, the NBA will immediately put together a social justice coalition who will be made up of players, coaches, and governors, and they will address various topics regarding social and civil issues. Secondly, each arena that is owned and controlled by organizations will be turned into voting stations for the 2020 general elections for the United States. And lastly, various advertising spaces during the playoffs will be dedicated to increasing civil engagement on a national and local level, along with increasing voter access. The NBA and its players do understand that a pause for one game may not result in direct changes, but as they promised prior to the restart, they are using and will continue to use their platform to strive for long-term change. We have now seen this boycott transcend into other sports like the WNBA, MLB, NHL, NFL, and even tennis, as Naomi Osaka was inspired not to play in her semifinals match in the Western and Southern Open. Though she did decide to play on Friday, it was her way of starting the conversation in a predominantly white sport. Within the last week of the sports world, it's clear to see that sports goes beyond entertainment. Athletes from all fields understand the power they have and how they can use it to demand change for the better. From Toronto, Canada, Zarita Sese, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Now with more NBA updates, we have joining us live is ABC Sports correspondent Tenny Sumagi. Good morning, Tenny.
Good morning, Archie. And life in the bubble for the NBA players, well, it's taking a toll on them emotionally, physically, and mentally. Boston Celtics forward Jason Tatum and Utah Jazz guard Mike Conley share more on composing their emotions while playing in the NBA bubble.
Yes, you could probably guess or imagine there's a lot been going on recently. It kind of made it difficult to focus on basketball. So it's just been a lot to process over this last week or so. And then on a much, I guess, less important scale, try to focus on basketball. I think we did a pretty good job today, just trying to regroup and refocus on the game tomorrow.
It is very, it's very different than what we're used to. I can tell you that. We're athletes. We're used to having to compartmentalize a lot of things, whether we have things going on at home or personal issues, and trying to go out there and perform at a high level. But being here in the bubble, it's tough to be here knowing what's going on outside and what's continually going on, and it seems like you're just so distant from it. But with that, it gives us opportunity to play the game and showcase what we believe in, everybody's personal opinions and challenges they want to pursue. So for us, it's just trying to focus on the game, but at the same time realizing it's just a game and there's a bigger picture to everything, and go out there and compete and have fun, do the best you can, try to win a championship, but understand that there's a lot more life out there that needs our help.
We have two final games today. Tatum and the Celtics blew out the defending champions, the Toronto Raptors, in Game 1 of their semifinal series, and the Los Angeles Clippers knock off the Dallas Mavericks to advance to the second round of the playoffs. In New York, Tenny Sumagi, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Tenny. That's our program for today. Join us again next week as we bring stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at eaglenews.net and at eaglenewslive.com. And follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Thank you for watching. I'm Archie Rose Natividad Yi. We live in interesting times. Stay tuned for Kid Cuento.